Okay, so this section is going to be by far the longest, as there were a ton of amazing developments, so let's dive right into it. First, let's revisit searching for girls and screening. So the first thing we talked about in the last episode was search parameters. So one new tip is to do occasional searches by who's new on the site. Because again, you've got to allow the site time to repopulate, and that usually takes a couple of months. So, every couple of months, do a search by who's new. Now on these, you're going to have to screen harder on the messaging because they don't have many match questions answered or the essays filled out. But these girls are going to be generally the most receptive to rapid fire conversation and rapid closing. Now let's move on to the screening. A lot of guys posted on the group that they had difficulty determining if the girl was fat from her pictures, okay? I'm going to say it again. If you think she might be fat, she's huge. Girls will generally look 1 to 2 points out of 10 less than their profile pictures imply, but occasionally they're actually going to be hotter than the pictures. So therefore, you don't necessarily want to be too presumptuous when you're choosing girls to message, but at the same time, don't cast too wide of a net, no pun intended, because that potential 6 might be a 4. Now on the other hand, I enjoy a cute young chubster from time to time, but that's just me. Now, a couple further thoughts on screening questions on OkCupid. The original advice that I gave was to limit it, insofar as what you're answering, to sex and relationship questions, and also to look at the girl's sex and relationship questions to judge whether or not she's DTF. Now, one thing that came up is someone on the group asked about match questions that are dealing with politics and religion. Personally, my first inclination when I see something about God or Jesus in her profile is to kind of just dismiss her out of hand, with the idea being that religious equals prudery, and it's kind of a bad sign insofar as hookup's concerned. However, God did say increase and multiply, aka time to fuck. But reflecting on this a little bit further, I think it's a bit of a gray area. I mean, personally, I've known Catholic girls who fucked. I mean, one of my first girlfriends was like a devout Catholic, and she'd fuck. It took her a little while to get there, but she'd fuck. And a lot of these girls are just that because their parents are, or, they fuck and then they just confess afterwards to make themselves feel better. So religious does not necessarily imply conservative. Now, I mean, personally, I know some generally progressive, forward-thinking people who happen to think Jesus is awesome. Personally, though, at the end of the day, even though it doesn't necessarily mean non-DTF, my concern is that I probably am not going to like her on a personal level, and she's going to be annoying when I meet her. But bottom line, don't necessarily worry about what the girl has listed for the answers to these like sex-related questions. The thing is, if your answer is acceptable, and she's marked it acceptable, and you lead when you actually show up, then shit's probably going to go down your way. So, for one quick example, why don't we have a look at a quick case study here. So with this, initially this guy, he looked at her personality, and it says she's better mannered, more kind, more energetic, yada, yada, yada. And then down here at the end, we have less romantic, less kinky, less sex driven, less adventurous. So that's not looking too hot. And then secondly, here's some of the answers to her questions. All right. How confident are your sexual abilities? She was super confident. She's like, say you've started seeing someone you really like. As far as you're concerned, how long will it take before you have sex? She said 6 or more dates. Fucked her about 2 hours after meeting. In terms of sex, how experienced would your ideal mate be with people other than you? Moderately experienced. Asked me many times if I was experienced, he said. Which is better, sex without sleeping together or sleeping together without sex? She said sleeping. He says, after sex, she went home. She had to work the next day. Would you consider sleeping with someone on the first date? She put no. Survey says 20 minutes LMR after a single drink and a bit of a walk. So Again, how the girl answers these questions may not reflect her true attitudes towards sex, right? This guy, he actually said, in real life, she's one of the most sexual, horny women I've ever had the chance to meet. They answer these questions for the provider male chose. In fact, I talked to a girl about this, and she said that you should take these prude answers that you see with a grain of salt. Why? Because it's quite easy for them to bump into coworkers and such on these dating sites. So again, they're putting it out there for chose and potential coworkers. Maybe they, who knows, maybe their mom's on the site, right? Everyone's on this shit these days. So having said all that, the question then is, what are reliable questions to help you screen, right? Otherwise, it's going to be photos and the attitude of the exchange only. The answer, as always, is still the zero screen. In other words, make your own messages and profile polarizing, and that does the screening for you. If she's not into it, she's simply not going to respond. Let me take a little moment here to stress that online messaging is not the same as cold approach, okay? Tenacity will not help you under these circumstances, right? So in real life, again, you want to go for it until it's done, et cetera, et cetera. Try again until it's fucking clearly done and she's out of the picture. That's not what's necessarily going on when you're online messaging. A willingness to move on to the girls who will actually meet you in real life is in fact much more beneficial if you want to get laid. Your primary screening objective should be to eliminate conversations with girls who will not meet you. Trust the process. A lot of girls will meet you. If you spend all your time on the ones who won't, then this shit's not going to get you laid. So in Execute the Program 1, I also briefly discussed a couple of ways of getting girls to send you messages first. So a couple more thoughts here on soliciting messages. The most important thing that you want to be aware of is this. If a girl messages you first and you're conveying your intentions fairly honestly in the match questions and on your profile, that she's down to fuck. It's going to be easy pickings. Now, I hear a lot of questions from guys saying shit like, well, what does it mean when you see that she's looked at your profile? Other than say right before going on the date or whatever. They're like, what does this mean when you see her looking at your profile? Is she trying to see if you've logged in since you first met to see if you're presumably pursuing other women? These questions boggle my mind, okay? Look, personally, I never understood guys trying to deduce what the big meaning is behind a girl looking at your fucking profile. To be honest, I don't even have time to notice shit like that. It would literally never cross my mind. So a rule of thumb, don't engage with internal or external information that does not directly serve the purpose of getting your dick wet. In other words, any speculative shit is not fucking admissible in this game. So if you're sending her shit like, hey, I saw you checked out my profile, this basically implies that you give a shit about such things. Any guy who's getting laid won't be paying attention to crap like that. In a similar vein, you don't want to like her moments on Tinders. For example, what I'm talking about here on Tinder, there's a feature where they can put up moments and it's almost like Instagram or something like that. They put up little pictures of their day and you can like them. Don't do that. It's not going to generate some message from her, and basically it just makes you look like a needy chode.